Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about my favorite and least favorite book from each month of 2025. I read a total of around 133 books last year, which is, I think, a record for me. And throughout the year, I found some new favorites. I had some books that I just really did not enjoy. I also want to preface that just because one of the books I picked is a favorite from that month does not mean it is a 5-star. It could be like a 4 or a 4.5 or even a 5, but it just is a book that of that month, of the options that I was picking from, was one that I enjoyed the most. I have my list here, so without further ado, let's get into the very first book. My favorite book that I read in January was Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have read all of her books at this point, and she is one of my favorite authors. This book takes place in the summer of 1983, and within it you're following 4 siblings that are the children of a famous, I think he's a singer, and every year they have an annual end of summer party. And so within this year, the party goes terribly wrong and it ends in a house fire, and you are following along on these siblings' kind of journey of discovering more about themselves and just how they were raised. You also get like a dual timeline, I'm pretty sure, with the parents meeting and then their relationship, and then you're also seeing how like the kids were impacted from their father. When I read this, I really didn't know what to expect. I know that I had enjoyed other Taylor Jenkins Reid books a lot. I had read, at this point, Carrie Soto is Back, and I'm pretty sure at this point I had also read Daisy Jones and the Six. So I wasn't like 100% sure how I was going to feel going into this one, because I wasn't also like fully sold on the premise of the book. But when I was reading it, I thought that this was such an enthralling and emotional book. You know that this group of siblings are the children of someone famous, so you almost think that they're going to have this status of wealth and fame already, but you quickly see that that is not the case. And I think that this was a beautiful story about love and sacrifice and self-discovery. And I really grew to care for the siblings throughout reading this book. I really enjoyed it. I did give this one 5 stars. But yeah, this was my favorite book of January. I think Taylor Jenkins Reid is just such an amazing author, and I love her books. My least favorite book of January was Finale by Stephanie Garber. This is the last and final book in the Caraval trilogy. I believe I gave this around 2.75 stars. And going into this book, I really didn't know like how I was going to feel about it. I read the very first Caraval book when it came out, whenever that was, 2017 maybe 2018. I think it was 2017 though, and I absolutely hated it. I remember I wrote a whole project on it for my English class in middle school about how much I disliked this book. And because I enjoyed Once Upon a Broken Heart, I really wanted to go back into the trilogy and give it another try, especially because I had never actually read Legendary and Finale. I had only ever read Caraval, and I didn't mind Legendary as much, but Finale just felt like such an all-over experience. I listened to it on audio, and I just remember being like so confused half the time as to like what was actually going on, and I just did not enjoy it. It just felt like so many things were trying to happen, and yet it was just all over the place. Initially, actually, I honestly almost I just re-looked at what books I read in January, and I forgot I read Onyx Storm in January, and I did not like that book. I gave that book the same rating. I mean, they're probably equal. I'll say both. I forgot I read Onyx Storm in January, but I disliked that one also. I was so irritated reading it. If you want to see like my real raw reaction, I have a reading vlog of it on my channel. I didn't even really love Iron Flame, so I don't know why I had such high expectations going into Onyx Storm. I thought it would be better, and it was not better. So yeah, I totally forgot that I read that book in January, but I also really disliked that. It was boring, just way too long. Way too long. My favorite book that I read in February was Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli. I gave this book 5 stars, and I did actually go to one of her, I guess it was a stop on her book tour, I think, signing of the book. With this, I absolutely loved Heartless Hunter. I read that book in December of 2024, and I just had so much fun reading that. And going into Rebel Witch, I just had so much fun reading this book. I was super interested in where the story was going to go, especially because this is a duology, so this was like the book that's going to wrap everything up. I just had so much fun reading it, and I think because I got to hear her talk about her experience writing it and about what this duology meant to her, added that additional appeal to me where I'm like, wow, like I can really see that she had so much fun writing these books. There was tension, yearning, banter. It had it all, and I had so much fun reading it. I told myself I was not going to include rereads on this list, but there is one book that I did a reread of in February that I was expecting to love, but actually I did not love. So in February, I did a reread of Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. And when I first read this book, I loved it. It was one of my favorite books. I gave it 5 stars. And I did a reread with my best friend. And as I was rereading it, I was like, wow, this is really, really cringy. And I can't believe I enjoyed it as much as I did the first time I read it. But I did read it for the first time when I had just gotten back into reading. So I think I really hadn't like fully developed my taste yet. I was enjoying pretty much everything that I've read. So I think now that I have like more books that I know that I like, I was able to see that this actually is one that I just really now don't enjoy. I was so sad upon this experience because I was like hyping the book up to my best friend so hard. And then as I'm reading it, I'm like, wow, I should not have talked this highly about it to her. In March, I read Kate and Frida by Kim Fay, and this was my favorite book of March. And honestly, it's probably one of my favorite books that I've ever read. Within the story, you are following Kate and Frida, and this whole book is just a series of letters between these two girls that are basically pen pals. They've never really met and they only know each other due to like correspondence of Kate works at a bookstore and Frida is like a journalist that is going to like trying to acquire one of the books there. I did a buddy read of this book with my mom and we randomly picked it off the shelf at a bookstore because we thought the cover was cute, and I just really loved the story in this book. Not only are you following these two girls create a really beautiful friendship, but they're talking about their love of books and their love of food, how that cultivates a community. But then they're also talking about these things that are going on in the world. I think this is written in like the 80s or 90s, probably 90s if I'm not mistaken. And you just see how even though it's taking place then, you see how there are so many tie-ins to present day. So I just thought it was a very beautifully done book. And even though it is told in this format of letters, each girl has such a distinct voice in their writing and you are able to tell the difference between like whose writing is who. I was very pleasantly surprised by this and I really, really loved it. I have 2 books in March that I really did not enjoy. The first one is a DNF, so I really can't say like too much about it because I didn't finish it. But this was Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage. I was listening to the audiobook of this and the male narrator's voice absolutely cringed me out so bad. I had to stop listening to the book because I could not continue. I simply could not continue listening to this. It was so bad to me. I did not enjoy it. The book that I actually finished reading was You Between the Lines by Katie Naiman, and I had seen so much hype for this book. I was reading it and I thought the premise was super interesting. You're following these 2 MFA students and they have this kind of rivalry. I think they both write poetry as well. You're seeing that kind of added like academic rivals, but the main female character was absolutely insufferable and was just not enjoyable to read about whatsoever, that I rated this 2.5 stars. And probably looking back, I probably would rate it even lower. In April, I started reading An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir, and this series is just one of my favorites of the year. You're gonna see that another book in the series was a favorite of mine in another month. You're following 2 characters in this first book. You're following Laya and Elias, and living in this empire where Laya is either a slave or a servant, and she's also working for like a rebellion group, and Elias is one of the elite like warriors of this empire, and his mom is very, very influential in this like army ranking. And you just see how they're both very unhappy and you're going on this journey, this rebellion that they're going through. I just had so much, certain parts of this book were not fun because it was so high stakes. I was so like nervous for these characters, but I was so enthralled by this story and I absolutely just love this book so much. I think I did give it 4.5 stars just because it felt like there were a couple lulls throughout the story, but this was one of my favorite books of the year, and the series is definitely a new favorite of mine that I've read this year. My least favorite book that I read in April was Fearless by Lauren Roberts. This is the last book in the Powerless trilogy. I really didn't even enjoy Powerless when I first read it. I listened to Reckless and I was like, okay, like not as bad of an experience as I had reading Powerless, but this one was so incredibly long. I just felt like it was the most like copy paste story and so obvious with like everything that was going to happen. I was guessing pretty much everything, and I just think it was way too long of a book. And the pacing was so repetitive. It needed to be like chopped in half. In May, my favorite book was A Torch Against the Night, also by Sabaa Tahir. This is the second book in an Ember in the Ashes series, and this is my favorite book of the series. I think a lot of the story is just these characters going on this like journey, but I loved it. I loved getting the additional POV that we get in this book. I just loved the whole story. I loved getting to know the characters more. I think that this was just one of my favorite books of the series. I really enjoyed that it picks up right where the first one leaves off, and it's also such a high stakes story. Again, this whole series is so high stakes that I was just so nervous for the characters throughout all the books. If you want a very good fantasy YA series, I highly recommend. My least favorite book of May was Quicksilver by Callie Hart. I'm very sorry. I very much disliked this book. I listened to the audiobook of it, and I know that so many people loved this book, so I was ready to enjoy it myself. However, I just could not. And again, I think this is also a problem that I listened to it on audio, and I just did not like the main male narrator's voice. So like as he was talking, I couldn't. It was so bad. And I also just think that the main female character was also just unbearable as well. And then towards the end of the book, it felt like it was trying to be ACOTAR so bad. I get that ACOTAR is a book that came out, like, was one of the pavers for the whole romantasy like genre, but there were just so many things in this book that like as I was finishing it, I'm like, wow, not every book needs this, not every book needs this, not every book needs this. Like so many things were just so like copy paste similar. I just did not like this book. I'm sorry. In June, I read another one of my favorite books of all time, and that was Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book came out, and I really can't even say that I was like super duper excited for it. Like I was looking forward to it, but it wasn't like a book that I was fully anticipating loving. But oh my gosh, I loved this book so much. This book takes place in the 80s, and you're following Joan as she is about to be a NASA like scientist and work in their space program. And it is such an enthralling story. As soon as I started reading this book, I was so captivated by everything. Like I was so invested so quickly, and I was like on the verge of tears. I had to like put this book down at times and walk laps because I was getting so worked up for like, I was so nervous for these characters. It's so high stakes, and you're feeling like dread, like this, something terrible is about to happen. And I was getting so just like, oh my gosh, like I just need to put the book down and I need to like go for a walk. But I just loved this. It was such a beautiful story. I think Taylor Jenkins Reid did an absolutely amazing job with this book. I loved it so much. One of my favorite books ever, honestly. I loved it so much. My least favorite book of June was Collide by Bal Cabra. I DNF'd this at 90%, and normally I do not DNF books. I have only had a couple of books this year that I have DNF'd. For me to DNF a book at 90% means that I just was not having a good time. This is a hockey romance. It's also college. This is a college hockey romance, and you are following the two main characters as they are like working together for this project, and our main female character hates hockey, and our main female character is a hockey player. I just remember like listening to this and being like, she is switching up. One minute she's fine, and then one minute she is like hating the male main character. I think I erased this from my mind like because I did not like it so much. I just had to stop. I think I was doing a puzzle as I was listening to this, and I was like, do I just push through and finish it? But I just was disliking it so much. I just was like, let me just not even finish it. In July, my favorite book was Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. I really enjoyed this book. I had known that other people really enjoyed it as well. Within this book, you're following Win and Bo, and you see that they both have limb differences, and they meet on, I think, a Halloween party, and something ends up happening that just brings their lives together, and you just see them grow a relationship through this. And I feel like even upon their first meeting, they had so much chemistry, and it was just such an enjoyable book to listen to. I listened to it personally, but I absolutely like devoured the audiobook. I think I finished it in like a day. I just did not want to put it down. their relationship was so sweet, and I really loved their friendship throughout this book. And then also like Wynn's friendship with her best friends Hannah and Caleb was just so fun to read about. I absolutely enjoy this. Such a sweet book. On the same note, my least favorite book of July was Out of the Woods by Hannah Bonam Young. And this book, you follow Wynn's best friends, Hannah and Caleb, who I said that I really enjoyed getting to see their friendship with Wynn in Out on a Limb. But this book follows them and their relationship. And at this point, they're already together. They're already married. They've been together for forever. And you see them kind of like hitting a lull in their marriage and basically going on this like camping retreat to try to just get that communication back and kind of re-spark their marriage. But oh my gosh. For how much I enjoyed getting to see these two characters in Out on a Limb, I couldn't stand some of their like reasonings for what they were doing in this book, which is Out of the Woods. I was like fully anticipating on loving this because I loved Out on a Limb and I loved getting to see their characters in that book. And I do think I felt a little bit slumpy as I was listening to this, and I don't know if it was the book's fault or if it was just like me already feeling that way. I just couldn't feel fully convinced or like in support of like Sarah's reasonings for like why she felt the way she did. And I also just didn't really like that whole like group setting of like this retreat they went on. I will say, I think that the concept though of like having a romance book about two people that are already together, about like they've known each other for so long, is a really great concept. And I think I would be really interested in reading more books like that. But in this book, I just did not like it, unfortunately. In August, my favorite book was Air by Sabaa Tahir. This is the spin-off after A Number in the Ashes in that whole like series. I don't want to say too much about like what this book is about. We're following three characters and I just thought that their story was insane. And the way everything came together. And at first when I was reading it, I was almost like, okay, what is happening? And then when like things got revealed, I was like, oh my gosh, she is so smart. And then at the very end, I was so like shocked by the one reveal, so shocked. And I need the second book so badly. And initially going into this book, I was so intimidated for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why, because I did love A Number in the Ashes so much. I'm just not sure if I was like nervous that I wouldn't enjoy this one as much, or just getting back into like that whole world if I was nervous going into. And then my least favorite book was Death is Only the Beginning by Acacia Waterdam. I read the arc of this through NetGalley, and I just remember not really enjoying the whole like concept of the story, and then like the characters that were supposed to have chemistry. I did not feel any chemistry between any of the characters, so I'm not sure. Just wasn't my fave. My favorite book of September was Fake Skating by Lynn Painter. I received the arc of this and I really didn't know like fully what to expect. I knew it was like a YA hockey romance, and going into it, I really enjoyed Lynn Painter's writing. It's so easy, but yet so like fun to read. And I thought the characters were very believable for being like that age. They're like in high school, I think probably around like juniors or seniors. I can't remember exactly, but they're like childhood best friends. They kind of became estranged and now they're back in this like fake dating situation. It was just so cute, so fun. I really, really enjoyed it. I devoured it. It was so like easy to read and I was just like, this is so good, like so fun. I have two books in September that I just really did not enjoy. First one was Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. I had tried reading this book a little while ago when I first bought it, and then I just could not get into it. So I just kind of forced myself to listen to the audiobook and to get through it that way. But I think that this was such a confusing story. I felt lost for so much of it. I didn't really care about any of the characters. It just felt like they were there. And I really don't even like know what happened in this book. I was so confused and just very confusing. It was so confusing and I was lost. I was so lost. Then my other least favorite book of September was Wildcard by Elsie Silver, which this was one of my most anticipated releases of the year. But I was just not a fan of this book for some reason. Like, I really enjoyed Wild Side when I read that when it came out in the beginning of the year, but this book I just think felt almost rushed. It felt just thrown together with like a group of tropes, and the tropes were like interesting to me. I was really excited for them, but it felt like they were just there for the sake of advertisement and being like, okay, well this book has these tropes. So I just was very disappointed by it. I didn't really like the relationship between the characters. was very sad for me because I really wanted to enjoy this book. My favorite book of October was Alchemized by Sen-Lin Yu. I was so nervous, and like this book did take me like a little bit to get through just because it is so long. I simply wanted to know what was going to happen in this book so badly because I did not read the original like work that this was. So I wanted to see what the hype was about. I wanted to see if it was as sad as people were saying it was. And I just thought it was such a terribly, terribly sad, heartbreaking story that I loved reading it, but I also hated reading it because it was so sad and I was so heartbroken for these characters and what they were going through. This is like a war story where you're set in this fairly intricate fantasy world, and it's just so heartbreaking to read about. My least favorite book of October was Direbound by Sable Sorensen. Again, this was another book that I'd seen a lot of hype of, and I think I'm going to, in 2026, I'm just going to completely disregard all of the TikTok, like book talk, any type of recommendation if I see a book is enjoyed by book talk, like Quicksilver, Direbound, I'm just not going to listen to it because I disliked both of those books so much. And this book just felt like it was trying to be fourth wing. So many aspects of this book, I was just like, it got to the point where I was just hate reading it because I was just so aggravated at everything that was going on. And this book was another one that was just so predictable. Like I was reading it and I'm like, you know what? I already know what's going to happen. I don't even know why I'm going to finish it because I already know exactly what's going to happen. I just did not enjoy this one. I don't even think I want to read the next one. In November, I have a couple favorite books. My first one was Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. I really enjoyed this. This is a holiday romance. It's a romance between Harriet and then a ghost of Christmas past. And it was just really, really sweet to read about. I think that their relationship was very wholesome. And I really liked Harriet as a main character. Super sweet. Had a fun time reading this. I actually think I listened to the audiobook. So it was a great holiday read. Super cute. I really enjoyed it. I also did listen to the first and second Percy Jackson books again. I've only ever read the first one, but then because the second season of the show was coming out, I wanted to read the second book. And I had so much fun like listening to these. They were just so enjoyable, so easy. They're so fast paced and just so like interesting. I have two least favorite books as well. First one is Hobbit. I read this for a video. I have my full thoughts in that video. It's where my boyfriend picked out my books that I was going to read. And I just feel like I didn't like it. I feel really bad that I didn't like it. But I just remember like trying to read it and like I thought it was so boring. And then I tried listening to it and I was also like, this is very boring. Lots of exclamation points, lots of singing, way too much singing. So just unfortunately was not a book for me. And then I also really, really disliked And Then There Was You by Sophie Cousins. I read Is She Really Going Out With Him in the beginning of the year by her, and I really enjoyed it. And then when I saw this one was coming out, I was like, okay, cover looks cute. I kind of remember like maybe reading the synopsis like halfway through. And I was like, okay, interesting enough. And then when I was listening to this book, I was just like, where are we going? At no point did I know who the love interest was. And then there's like an AI robot. I don't know if it's a spoiler, but there's an AI robot. And like you think it would be this almost like commentative piece on AI and like the damages of that. But then it's almost like condoning it and like saying that she had a good experience with it. Super weird. Didn't like it at all whatsoever. And then of December, my favorite book that I read in December was This Woven Kingdom by Tahereh Mafi. And I was really, really shocked by this. And my main reason for going into this book, which is a like Persian inspired YA fantasy, it has jinn, it has a prince, it's a forbidden romance, but I saw a fan art of it and I really liked the fan art. So I was like, okay, let me give the book a try because I read Shatter Me, hated Shatter Me. Whenever that was, like 2022, I think I read it. I did not like Shatter Me. So I really wasn't sure if I wanted to read anything else by this author, but I really, really enjoyed This Woven Kingdom. Even though I think it took me a little bit to get into the book itself, just because of like, you're building up this world, you're building up these characters. I still really had a great time. I was super interested in the story. I really, really liked our main female character and I was really interested to see like what was going to happen. Even when I wasn't reading this book, all I wanted to do was pick up this book and read it. And I just had a great time. I'm reading the second book right now. And my other least favorite book of December was Soul Searching by Lila Sage. This is my second book. I just don't think that she's maybe an author for me because I really tried to read the first book and like done and dusted and I couldn't get through it. But this one, I thought the premise seemed really interesting. It's about a girl that can see ghosts. She's back in her hometown after not having been there, I think, for a little while. You know, focuses on like this forced proximity of like she's living with this guy who owns an upholstery shop, and it was boring. I didn't really care about the characters. I didn't feel any chemistry between them either, so I just don't think, unfortunately, that she's an author for me, and I don't think that I will be picking up any of her books, even though the covers are beautiful. I love her covers, but I just don't think her writing is necessarily for me. I'm so sorry if you hear I'm so sorry if you hear Aslan whining in the background. I think he wants to eat dinner. Yeah, it's his dinner time. So those were my favorite and least favorite books of each month of 2025. And I'm super excited for all the books I'm going to read in 2026. I definitely have some like goals and things that I'm looking to do in 2026 with my reading. I would love to hear what your favorite or least favorite book of the year was in the comments. And if you agree with me or disagree with me, let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!